Dream come true of being a dad with the dream to be of entrepreneurship, you're presented with a world of possibilities along with a world of challenges. Join Joel Lewis as he interviews successful entrepreneur dads sharing how they made it work from the start. This is Startup Dad HQ.
Hey, welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters. This is Joel Lewis, live with another episode of Startup Dad Headquarters, where we're exploring the intersections between fatherhood, business, and life. And I'm very excited. Although I just came off of my 9 to 5, I work night shift, just came off, but I'm pumped right now because I got a great guest for you guys this morning. I know this is going to be an awesome interview. So we had some technical difficulties in the beginning. Of course, with technology, you always have to deal with that. So I won't waste too much time, and we'll go right into the intro. So today I have Vidar Brekke. Vidar has 15 years of industry experience, founder of 3 tech startups. One exists, spanning interactive agencies to marketing analytics companies. Currently as the CEO of Meddle, that's Meddle.it. He is on a mission to provide subject matter experts with the tools they need to establish themselves as thought leaders, earning trust and peer recognition for themselves and their employees. Between startups, he serviced as Chief Product Officer of Conversions, VP of Marketing for JP Morgan, and Strategist for Ogilvy. Vidar has a master's in communications and served as the officer in the Norwegian Navy. Other than that, Vidar is also a co-founder of TEDx Navisync, a jazz aficionado, uh, audiophile, home brewer, and purveyor of hobbies too obscure to mention. In his free time, he does his best to mold his wife and 8-year-old daughter into entrepreneurship as well. One of them is showing great promise. That's awesome. So why don't we go ahead and bring in Vidar to the show? Hey Vidar, how you doing today?
Good morning, Joel. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for your time. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, folks, you guys didn't see, but we had some technical difficulties, and Vidar was super patient with me, and I really do appreciate that.
No problem.
Hey, so I gave the folks a little bit about you. Anything else you want to elaborate? We like to start the show with talking about where you are right now. So go ahead and elaborate a little bit more. Talk about Metal.it, which is exciting, and I think will be very useful to some of the audience. And let us know what you got going on.
Sure. So I'm one of these serial entrepreneurs who um, thrive on working in startups and being the underdog. And this is my third or maybe fourth startup, depending on how many I'm counting. And my current business called Meddle or Meddle.it is a content marketing platform that allows people who are too busy to create their own content or blog every day to still showcase their expertise by simply curating and commenting on industry news that they read every day. So we're trying to make it very easy for people who may not be natural writers or communicators to still express themselves and showcase their expertise so that they can get the recognition they deserve in the industry, which helps them get a job, keep their job, get the meetings that they're looking for. So I'm very excited about that. We launched a new version just yesterday, so everybody check it out. It's meddle.it.
Yeah. I love Metal. I've been messing around with it. It's a really cool tool, and I'm still trying to hone in my blogging skills and get content to add onto my website as a new startup business owner myself, and Metal. And I love the micro blog aspect of Metal.it. I think it's a really cool tool, and I see there's a lot of interaction, a lot of posts that are being put on there already, so it's getting a lot of good attention.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, cool. So that's great. We've talked about where you are right now. Now, Startup Dad, we like to, as the name kind of explains, we like to go back to the start, right? Take us back a couple of years. I know your daughter is now 8 years old, and you've had all these companies that you've started, as well as at some point you took the leap, right? You
Yeah.
left. You had these, pretty. I mean, VP of marketing for JP Morgan, strategist at Ogilvy. Take us back to when you took that leap. What was going on then during that time in your life?
Well, I think the best way to explain it is go even further back and look at how I grew up. So my parents, they were self-employed. They had a small convenience store in a small town in Norway. My grandparents on one side were farmers, on the other side were merchants. So to me, working for yourself in your own business was natural. Even though they had very small businesses, just the idea that you go to work and you try to make something out of yourself and your own resources was very natural to me. I came to the US to study to do a PhD that I never finished, and I started working in advertising instead, and I found quickly that there's a lot of amazing opportunities that you get when you work for large companies in terms of access to clients, to resources, but there's also a lot of limitations on what you can do. And having grown up in with parents who were self-employed, it was very hard for me to figure out how I was going to make a difference working for somebody else. And I decided, then that I was going to at least make, some baby steps, and I started joining some startups. And once you're in a startup and you realize that, you have the power to make some amazing things out of virtually no resources at all, it's very hard to go back to taking a job, because I think in this day and age, you have an amazing opportunity to go and say, I have an idea, I can put together a team or some resources to do something. You can find guys who sit in their basement, building a piece of software that, 6 months later is used by millions of people.
Right.
Knowing that the individual has the power to touch millions of lives, which is unprecedented in history. How can you sit back and say, no, thank you, I'm just going to ride this one out at my current job. I do not want to make any difference in the world, and I just couldn't do that. I saw that with these opportunities you have to really make a difference in other people's lives, in your own life, with fairly little resources. It was hard for me to say that I'm going to sit back and not make that my story.
Nice. Okay. All right. So so you grew up with parents that were pretty much entrepreneurs or small business owners. So you kind of had that already built in. You went to school, got the master's, got a corporate job, was pretty much living I guess what we would call here the American dream, right? And then you started getting into the startup scene, and you got a sense of that entrepreneur spirit that was already there, kicked in, and you got a sense of, hey, I could build things, I could create things on my own. Why go back to this 9 to 5 grind? So where were you then from a family standpoint?
Well, I had just gotten married at that point, and my wife kind of knew that I was entrepreneurial, and she I guess loved me for who I was, and it's very important to have the support of your family if you want to be an entrepreneur, because it's not an easy journey. You basically say, okay, we're now going to put everything on the line, and with startups it's tough, because it's not like you're trying to start a small business to take care of your family. The way I look at startups is that it's binary. The outcome is binary in the sense that either you succeed big or you completely fail. And when you completely fail, you have less money than when you graduated college, and you have a family to take care of. So you have to decide, is this really for me? Because this is the big difference between startups and small businesses. And a lot of people don't understand that because they think everything is a startup. But a small business might be a restaurant, it might be a small consultancy, something where the rules for how to operate in that market and how to build that business is fairly known.
Right.
Startup, on the other hand, you go out and you have very little resources and you say, I'm going to compete with IBM or Microsoft, or I'm going to kill Apple in the music business.
Right.
And the whole idea of a startup is that you are going to go from 0 to 60 in the next couple of years because you go out and maybe you get some venture capital. And the expectation is that this company will be worth 100, 200, 300 million dollars in 3 or 4 years. If not, it is a failure. And so a startup is not a small business, and which makes it, the stakes are makes the stakes very high in the sense that, when you succeed, it's amazing, but when you don't succeed, there's absolutely nothing there. And I think a lot of people who are thinking about going out on their own need to figure out, am I trying to start a small business, or am I trying to create a startup whereby I need to go and raise some money because, we're not probably going to make money in the next few years. The business model is not built on us making money in the next few years. The business model is built on us selling for $500 million in 5 years without having revenues, which has happened many times. And you need to be a certain type of crazy to do that.
Right.
And I am that certain type of crazy, and I haven't retired yet, so I'm still working on it.
Right. All right. So you're living on peanut butter and jelly for 5 years, right? So how do you? I've heard some very interesting stories from dads of how they approach their significant others and say, hey, I want to do this, right? And it sounds like your wife is super supportive because you're going into this business model that says, hey, we're going to be living on peanut butter and jelly for 5 years, with the hope at the end of the 5 years we get bought for 19 billion, like like
Yeah.
the What's Up app, right? So what approach did you take to kind of convince her or show her that, hey?
Yeah, I think this is with anybody who wants to start a business and live what might seem like a more stable financial life. They first need to convince their spouses and significant others that this is a good idea. Because if you can't get over that hump, nothing else is going to work out.
Right.
Then you need to convince, other people to do the same thing and trust you with this idea and say, come jump over a cliff with me, or quit your job and join me in this dream and make that dream other people's dreams. So as an entrepreneur, you're always selling, and the first person you need to sell is your spouse. I think it's if you meet the spouse test, you're off to a good start, because your spouse realizes that their life and their financial security and well-being is directly tied into your success. So if you can't convince them that this is actually worthwhile, you probably don't have a good business idea, or it's not at the point where it's ready to be sold, so to speak, to other people you need to help you, or to investors or whatever. But not every spouse can be turned into a startup spouse. And so I think that it is a team effort, and you both need to be aware and comfortable with the risks. And that's not something that you can necessarily turn somebody into. You kind of have to have that personality from the outset, that this is something you want to do because it defines who we are. My wife knew that I was entrepreneurial, and she's not shocked when I say, honey, we gotta just go out and do this again. She's heard that story several times, and she's like, okay, so fine, no more restaurants for the next 5 years. It's okay, we can deal with it.
Right.
But I don't like in a relationship, you have to have the trust of your spouse, and you need to earn that trust, and that's not something that can be done overnight.
Yeah, I love what you say. You're kind of using your spouse as a good barometer, right? Like if your spouse is like, yeah, I don't get it, I don't understand it, it probably something you need to think through a little bit more. And it sounds like I said your wife is super supportive, and I've come, you know, with through these interviews, I've found that, you know, a lot of the spouses, you know, they understand who they're marrying, they understand what they're getting into. I've heard even some you know, entrepreneurs using PowerPoint. I had one guest who used a PowerPoint, kind of laid it all out to kind of show his wife what his plan was, and at the end of the PowerPoint, she was on board. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So let me ask you, what so you have this window where you're looking at, hey, I want to start this business, and potentially it's going to take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. What do you do with these startups to keep you motivated throughout those years? Because, you know, you're, like you said, startups are completely, you know, I'm interviewing dads who have brick and mortar businesses. I'm interviewing dads who are consultants. I interviewed a coaching, you know, writing book authors. So it kind of varies, but I think, like you said, startups are definitely very unique because the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is way out there. So how do you stay motivated day in and day out throughout the 3, 4, 5 years?
I think it comes down to you believing in yourself, because when you're in a startup, you're an idiot until you're a genius. And you have to believe that, you know, you are some, you know, that genius moment will happen, but you also need to be prepared for failure. And I think the most important thing to keep yourself motivated is not treating uh, you know, the lack of success as failure, because there's going to be a lot of failures when you're in a startup, because you're forging ahead in a new path in a new market, and you're trying to do something nobody's done before.
Mm-hmm.
And you are going to have a lot of small failures, but the important thing is that you treat every bump in the road as a learning experience, and the idea or the key is to fail fast, not
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time and money failing, but spend a lot of money, you know, focusing on what works. So the faster you can fail and the faster you can learn from that, the more runway you have with the resources you have. So having you know, an attitude that running a startup is just a set of experiments where most of them are going to fail, and that is a good thing because you know what not to do, what the wrong thing is, and the more you learn about what doesn't work, the closer you are to what will work. And I think what you need to do to survive is look at every, you know, little failure as something that strengthens you and your business, and because when you're in a startup, you need to be motivated by what you haven't seen yet, and then you need to treat everything that you're gaining in knowledge as a victory that, you know, helps you move forward. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
cultural thing. You know, not every culture embrace failure, but
Yeah.
fortunately, you know, here in the U.S. and in the startup community, failure is just normal. Failure is seen as an asset because you're acquiring knowledge. And I
Right.
think embracing failure is really the key to sustaining a healthy mental state as you're struggling through a startup.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love everything you just said there. One, believe in yourself. Boom. That's like powerful, right? That's like step one. And then two, knowing that, hey, you're going to hit those bumps in the road. You're going to fail, but you know, really the failure is if you quit, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to look at it as a learning experience, get yourself up, you know, and I love oh, I always mess up the name, but there's a quote where Mm. But there's a quote by a guy that I love to follow. Basically, he says that, you know, if you fall on your back,
Mm,
right? If you could look up, you could get up,
mm,
right?
mm.
So don't look at failure where you've fallen and you can't get up. If you could look up, get up,
Mm.
learn from it, and keep moving, pushing
Yeah.
forward. So I love that. What can you tell us? Can you give us a time? So, you know, it's a perfect segue. Can you give us a time when you failed with your business, and you know how what was going through your mind during those times? Was there doubt? Obviously, fear because of your family. Can you share with us one of those moments?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to keep your your spirits up all the time, and when you decide to fold and do something else, it is a moment of truth where you're like, okay, this was not my moment where I can retire. I am now back to square one, and I need to now be motivated to do something else. And at those points in time, you are probably so drained because you've given absolutely everything you have, and it did work out. And when that has happened to me a few times, I go back and I take a job for two reasons. One, I want to get the fresh perspective. I want to meet some new people. I want to try some new challenges, and I want to do it knowing that there's some financial security, and I can build up some of my resources again. And so when I do that, I realize also after a year or so that, well, this is now getting boring again. And I'm starting to think about all the things that I'd like to do. But when you've given absolutely everything, it's smart to find a place where you can be a little bit more financially secure, and just recharge your batteries and take a new perspective on life. And often during that time you get to reflect on what worked and what didn't work, but you also think, okay, I had all these other ideas, and now I realize that they are also bad ideas, or you realize that they are good ideas. So the best thing you can do when you have kind of a failure is to find ways to step back and do something different, because when you're so close to your challenges, financially or business-wise, you lose perspective on what matters, and going back to work for somebody else for a while allows you maybe to focus more on your family, which is great. But I think changing perspectives is always good, and so if you have the financial resources to take a sabbatical and do something completely different for a year, you should do that. The most important thing is that you just need to get yourself out of that situation you were in to clear your mind, and I think that that's the best thing you can do, is just allow yourself to have failed and try something new, and then if you want to go back to being an entrepreneur, that will happen naturally as your batteries recharge.
So take a reset, take a step back, if you need to, get some financial security, and then once you're ready, are you taking the full leap at that point again, or are you kind of doing a side hustle, kind of working the 9 to 5, and then starting to validate your startup and going through the MVP, minimum viable product, for those who don't know?
Yeah.
Are you taking that approach, or do you just take the leap?
I think it's somewhere in between, because I realized that I start playing with a new idea. I might try to get an MVP together, but I realized that in order for this to now work, I actually need to dedicate myself fully. Because there's a lot you can't have a startup as a hobby. You need to decide at some point, I just now need to give it everything. You can't go to an investor and say, I treat this as a hobby. You need to say, I am sacrificing everything, because why else would you invest in me? Why else would you believe in me if I don't believe enough in myself to put it all on the line? The challenge is knowing exactly when that time is. And I think in many cases I have jumped off very early on, taking a lot of risk very early on, compared to other people who are more risk averse. But I'm comfortable with risk. I'm happy to make that leap when I think the idea is mature enough to warrant raising funding or getting a team together. But a lot of people, they are probably better off, emotionally and financially, by trying to have this as a side project. But the key is you need to make that leap when it's time, because you're really wasting your time and other people's time if you are not willing to make that leap. And so then don't treat startups as a hobby. You have to treat it as something that at some point you will dedicate yourself fully to. If you don't have that mindset, you will not succeed.
Yeah, yeah, and the investors are looking for you to be fully in. You got to have the skin. What's the term there? Skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
And they want to see that sweat equity, that you're fully committed to this. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Can you share with us a moment? So you had your failures, you had you returned back to your a 9 to 5, if you will. You start now you're starting a new venture with Meddle dot it. Have you can you share with us a moment where you feel like I've made it, I'm successful, my family's provided for, my children, my child.
Hi, Joel, I lost you there.
Vidar, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh man, this is just not my morning, my friend. I don't know what is going on today. It is just not a good day for me. Let me get this running again. I think. All right, we are back. I think everything is working again. All right, we're still recording, so audio is good. We're back on the broadcast on YouTube. I am sorry, folks, we lost connection there for a second. Completely my fault. So I was saying that, can you share with us a moment where you felt that you've made it, you're providing for your family, you're sending your daughter to the school that you want to send her to, any moment that you felt like, hey, we've made it. We're successful, hun.
um, so this might be a shocker, but I haven't reached that moment yet, and I think it's important to put into perspective that very few people actually feel that way.
Yeah.
I think that you know when you're saying we've made it, this was all worth it. You're comparing that to some alternate ending, but you never know what the alternate ending is. You only know what you're doing right now. And this whole thing about the green being, grass being greener on the other side, right? It's one of those things where, I know a lot of people have really good, safe jobs. They're not necessarily happy, but they're content because they would never go out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that they would necessarily say that their life and the choices they have made is worth it somehow. I think what's important is that you appreciate the journey more than the destination, because you don't really know where you're going to end up. All you know is that I'm going to make some things here and now that are going to be meaningful to me. It's going to be meaningful to my community, to my family, and you have to define that in a way that it becomes sustainable, so that you can live with the definition of meaningfulness as you've created for yourself. Being a struggling entrepreneur, trying to change the world, trying to raise a child to have good values, to be healthy, those are meaningful things to me, whether I become rich or not. I will look back and I will say I picked this journey because it was the journey that I was supposed to take. Whether I had a big outcome, financial outcome that made it worth it in retrospect is something that I will only know in the future. So I think it's very dangerous to focus too much on there's going to be a moment here now when it's going to be worth it. It needs to be worth it now, even though you're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, there's a recent study done saying that 86, I think this is where you were going, kind of in the start of what you're saying, 86% of Americans are not happy with their job, and something around 62% of them are thinking about leaving their jobs, right? Or some of them may be thinking about, I'm sure majority of them are thinking, hey, if I go to another job, right, the grass is greener, right? If I go to another job, I'll be happy. If I go to, if I get this job or this promotion, I'll be happy. And then when they get there, they find out that they're not happy. And what you're saying here is that, just the fact that you are pursuing your dream, creating something for your community, creating something for the world, those give you that sense of fulfillment and happiness, and as opposed to, hey, this pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. You're living your enjoyment today, every single day, and it's scary, but that's part of the journey.
Yeah, and I see this in my daughter. I mean, she is growing up watching me, and now and I've tried to make her feel that she's empowered, she can do anything she wants, but she sees that her dad is doing whatever he wants, that he feels empowered to do anything that he can imagine, and she will constantly come to me with ideas for how she wants to change the world, for businesses, for websites she wants to do, and because she doesn't feel that there's not anything she can't do, and that's inspiring as well. And I see that I created a monster. I created somebody just like myself, but I love the fact that she feels that the world is her oyster, that she can be whoever she wants to be and do whatever she wants. The challenge, of course, as a parent is that most of the things that she envisioned she can't actually do. So you need to keep her motivated and not say keep on working on those ideas, even though you can't execute on all of them, because that's life as entrepreneur anyway. that you can't do it all by yourself. But the fact that I've raised a child who turns her imagination into how can I improve upon my life or the life of somebody else. To me, maybe that is part of the journey that makes me feel that it's worth it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I interviewed an entrepreneur, Brian Shea. He's a consultant. And one of the things he said is he made the leap when his daughter was born, like the day after she was born. It hit him, and he said basically the reason why I made the leap is because when my daughter is 8, 10, 15, and she says, Dad, I want to do this, or she looks at me and she knows that I'm not happy and I never pursued my dreams, and I'm telling her that you could pursue your dreams, he didn't want to feel like a hypocrite. He wanted to be able to look at her dead in the eye and say, you could do anything that you want to do in this world. Right. So yeah, awesome. So we're coming towards the end here. I like to get this is one of my favorite parts of the show, is kind of jumping into your toolbox, if you will, and kind of it's kind of a couple of questions that I ask to kind of get some of your tips and tricks and some of the things that you do as an entrepreneur, as a dad, to be successful in kind of both of those, in balancing both of those things that are going on at the same time. What is the first question is, what is the number one time management tool or hack that you have to kind of balance between family life and your business?
Well, my wife tells me when I need to stop working. That's
Nice.
that's one thing. No, seriously, well, she does. But I'm kind of analog in the sense that paper lists, writing stuff down. There's a lot of technologies out there to keep you on track, but having a list checking off things when you get them done helps you create a sense of accomplishment. And it's very important when you're an entrepreneur where so many things are in the future that you find a way to see that you're making progress every day. And you can do it in any way you want, but having a paper list and checking things off works for me. So you know, the other thing to do to kind of balance is that you kind of need to force yourself to set aside time to be with your family. It sounds very silly, but you have to, and I actually start penciling in family time on my calendar. You know, if I'm working from home and I know my daughter is coming home, you know, from school, I, you know, try, and of course I fail most of the time, but I try to say, okay, this is going to be a, you know, a father and daughter, you know, hour, and we're going to work on whatever she wants to work on. So you kind of, you know, you have finite amount of hours during the day, and unless you plan for even how you're going to, you know, take care of your family, you know, and socialize, it's very easy to drift into, you know, I got a deliverable tomorrow and I need to do that. But you know, I fail most of the time, but I try, and my most successful, you know, attempts at spending more time with my family is when I pencil them into my calendar.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. You talked about a resource that you use for your online resources. Can you tell us one specific one that you use for your list building or kind of keeping things in track?
Well, I like having you know, some CRM tools, the customer relationship management tools, for my business, because it allows you to keep track of all your contacts. And then set yourself reminders that I need to reach back to this person, whether, you know, you're trying to do business with them or not. Set yourself reminders to who you need to keep in touch with, because when you're a startup, all you got is goodwill from, you know, your extended network, and you need to find ways to nurture that network. And I'm not good at it, but I'm trying to, you know, organize, you know, my contacts, you know, weak links and strong links into treating them almost like customers who need to be followed up with. So that's one thing that I think is really important, that, you know, you treat all your contacts as customers who need to be, you know, catered to. Lots of tools to do that, but I use just some CRM tools to do so, and you know, whatever tool works for you is fine, but don't forget about the people that don't seem to have immediate value to you, because they will have value probably in the future.
Powerful. Yeah, definitely. So the last question I have, Vidar, is it's a little bit longer one, but it's one of the ones that I know the audience really likes to hear the answer for, and it's on the other side of on this broadcast, listening in, is a dad who is at this point is fired up and ready to go, but as soon as the broadcast is over, he will put down his mobile device or close his computer, and life is going to happen. And by next week, he will find himself right back in the day-to-day minutia. What would you say to that dad to inspire him beyond this broadcast?
Well, I think the biggest challenge people have is knowing where to start, and it's a lot simpler than they might think. I tell people to envision where you want to end up, and then break it down from there, how you got there. So start at the top and then say, okay, I want to have this kind of business. Okay, how did that happen? What was the thing that brought you there? And then when you break down all the different things that it takes to make it, you get to the first step. So there was just this friend of mine, for example, she wanted to be a makeup artist for celebrities. I said, okay, sounds like a great plan. How do you start doing that? And I said, okay, so envision yourself now, being featured in a fashion magazine as a celebrity makeup artist. Okay, how did you get there? What are the contacts you needed? What are the skills you needed to get there? How many years would it take? And then she broke it down, and she, she realized that the first thing she needed to do was work at the makeup counter at Macy's. And we came up with a list of, there were like, 50 different steps that would possibly take her to a celebrity status, but it all starts somewhere, it's like, so I think everybody needs to realize that they can get there if they understand how to get there, and how to get there is not so hard if you really think about what are all the steps that led up to this, imaginary success in the future.
Right. Yeah. Break it. So look at the full picture. Break it down to smaller bite. Start from the end destination, and then kind of break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks, and then finally, when you get to the step one, which I love the step one. I love to quote the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yeah.
You find out that first step is really not as difficult, and it's probably a lot easier.
Yeah.
Than you think it is.
And the important thing is to realize that step is a step on the journey, because that will keep you motivated.
Yeah. Awesome. So Vidar, I know we asked you in the beginning, like, what are you working on and stuff like that. Any final things you want to share with the audience about your business, about Meddle.it, anything else that you might be working on that you want to share?
Well,
and we'll say goodbye after that.
I think I just want to tell people to check out Meddle.it, but as entrepreneurs, I think it's important that you don't get locked too much into thinking about just your business, because inspiration comes from everywhere. And remember to have hobbies. Remember to read and study and do things that have nothing to do with your business, because most likely this is where you're going to find strength and energy and inspiration and perspective. So always make sure you balance your startup with something that is completely the opposite, whether it's sports, hobbies, whatever it is. You need that counterbalance to stay sane as a startup dad and as an entrepreneur. So don't forget about your life.
Nice. That is an awesome way to end this interview, and I really appreciate your time, Vidar, and I again apologize for all the technical difficulties we had.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Hey Startup Dads, take the next step right now and download your free guide called 9 Apps Every Startup Dad Should Have in His Toolbox. It's only available at startupdadhq.com/free gift. Again, that's startupdadhq.com/free gift. So go download it now, and we'll see you next time on Startup Dad HQ.